Hey everybody, good day and welcome to my channel Positive by Negative, where we're turning that black spiritual coal into shiny spiritual diamonds by using negative life experiences and alchemizing those into some of our best tools that we can leverage for a better and more expansive life. And so my name is Aaron. I am a light worker who also happens to be a recovering addict and alcoholic. And the reason I put this channel together was because I feel like there's a lot of light workers out there in the world that are dealing with addiction issues and alcoholism. And I think with the evolution of human consciousness, the way it's going, which is pretty undeniable at this point, I think a lot of us are coming into a spiritual awakening, and not everybody has the tools and the resources to kind of deal with that change in life and kind of understand what's going on. So I wanted to make this channel as, as a resource for people, that are going through a similar journey that I've gone through in my life. And, and know that, or help people to know that you're not alone and that you are absolutely worthy of, all the grace and love from the divine, that you can handle. So, like I said, the reason I started this is because over the last year or so, I just have felt this very strong call, or I guess you would say a pull from the divine to start working on this channel. And at first, about a year ago, I thought it was kind of a fluke. I was like, I have no desire whatsoever to be a YouTuber. I never even thought of it. And I don't know, I just somehow got into this habit of like watching a lot of spiritually oriented YouTube channels and posts, and kind of starting to see a lot of similarities and commonalities that I had with the people that were posting, but not many of them were talking about it in the context of recovery. And so that's why I thought, this would be a good opportunity to put myself out there and kind of tell my story and maybe help some people. I make no claims to be any kind of a medical professional. I'm not any kind of a psychic. I'm not any kind of a channel. So if you want your fortune read, I'm sorry, I'm not the person that can do it for you. But what I can do is I can share my experience, strength, and hope, and maybe, help at least one person kind of find their way through this awakening process. And so, you might be wondering, what is a spiritual awakening? And I guess the answer to that would be, it's a return. So awakening, in my opinion, is sort of a misnomer. I would say it's more of a remembering. We are, as humans, just by our very nature, spiritual beings. We are a divine spiritual being, timeless, immortal being that's kind of having this human experience. It's my belief and my understanding that before we come here on earth, we choose this life, and we kind of choose it as a way to gain strength and to learn. On the other side of the veil where we come from, there's not much in the way of adversity. There's not any kind of challenges to speak of that would help us to grow. And so, seen from that way, I kind of look at the earth as being sort of a combination of a spiritual school and gym. We come here in this heavy, dense energy to kind of strengthen up our spiritual muscles, if you will. And before we come down here, we kind of choose these challenges that we're going to run into in life and kind of plan out our life. And I mean, of course, we have a certain amount of free will and free agency in there, but it seems to me that, the bumpers are always kind of up, and we always kind of have a guide, that makes us kind of go in the general direction of the life path that we choose before we get here. So, I think a lot of us, especially light workers, who, we come down here to be of assistance with, the evolution of human consciousness and the spiritual ascension. I think we, in particular, put ourselves through some pretty difficult circumstances. A lot of us are addicts and alcoholics. I think a lot of us intentionally, kind of incarnate into very toxic environments, homes that maybe aren't the happiest in the world, or, aren't maybe the ideal version of what a family should be. And I think a lot of us come here, number one, to help, ourselves learn and to help ourselves get stronger, but to also help, those people around us, when we're younger and before we actually have our awakening, kind of awaken themselves too and grow as well. So it's really a two-way street there. I think life, until you have your awakening as a light worker, probably seems pretty difficult. It really does, until you can understand and kind of see the lessons behind some of these circumstances and events. It probably seems unfair. I know it did to me. It seemed like I could just never get any footing on anything. It just seemed like my life was just all it ever was hard, and it seemed like it just sucked. And it wasn't until I had a spiritual awakening that I could understand, like, hey, I can actually use those events and those circumstances as my greatest tool, to learn from, become stronger, and to kind of rise above that level of victimhood that I felt for a long time, and to help other people with that process. So, like I said, being a light worker, I myself incarnated into a fairly difficult situation. I grew up with, a single mom, and she was a cop. She was a police officer. And that right there, just having a single parent who's a police officer, and I'm an only child too. And so it was just me and her, made life difficult. She always worked weird hours. A lot of times she worked nights, worked evenings. A lot of times she was asleep during the day when I was up. And it just was never normal. You know what I mean? It just seemed like every day was kind of a struggle. I literally worried every day of my childhood that my mom wasn't going to come home from work. I mean, because as a police officer, that's a better than outside chance that that's going to happen. And so, my life from the very get-go was stressful. It was chaotic. I never had any kind of a normal sleep pattern when I was a kid. I was always getting picked up at babysitters when my mom would get off work at like 2 a.m. And it just never seemed like things were ever going to be normal for me. And I always kind of felt that way. And so when I got to school, I always felt like the other kids knew something I didn't. They all had siblings. They all had a mom and a dad who had normal jobs. And, it just always seemed like everybody else had a situation that I couldn't relate to. And that was hard. It really was. It made for a very difficult childhood. And I wouldn't say that it was unhappy per se, because when my mom was off and available, she spent as much time as she could with me and gave me as much love as she could. But that didn't happen very often. I was left alone a lot. I was a child of the 80s. I was a latchkey kid, so I was literally home by myself. From the time I started elementary school, I'd come, let myself in the house. And fortunately, my mom could patrol in the area where we live, so she would usually stop by a few times, during the day or at night whenever she was working and stuff. And I was left alone quite a bit, and that was hard. It really was. But in the 80s, that was fairly normal. Latchkey kids weren't at all uncommon, and so that part of it didn't seem abnormal. But so it was just me and her until I was about 11, and then she got married to my stepdad, and he had been in Vietnam, and he was moved to where we were and became a cop after he got out of the Army. And he was hard to live with. He really was. He drank a lot. He was verbally, abusive, and never really cared for me. I mean, I just got the feeling from the time that they got married that his main goal in life was to make me go away as soon as he possibly could, and it worked. So, those circumstances made for a difficult life. They really kind of did. I never felt like I could get ahead. I never felt like I was going to be successful, and it was just rough. And so, I got through school, and when we got to high school, things changed, at least for me. Between my freshman year, I drank a couple times with friends and just never really took off with that. I know a lot of kids drink quite a bit in high school, and I was never one of those. But I did find drugs the summer between freshman and sophomore year, and I remember the first time I had my experience with drugs, specifically stimulants. I just fell in love. I'd been tired my entire life of having weird sleep patterns and stuff, and from being stressed out. And for the first time, I was like, I think this is what people, like normal people, feel like. Like, I feel good. I feel like I've arrived. I felt like, this is where this is what life should feel like. And so, I pursued that high that I got that first time all through high school. And thank God I had good friends. I had a few good friends who were honor students, high honor students, that really kind of kept me in line. I didn't really hang out. I was really sort of the only major drug user in my friend group. So fortunately I had good friends around me that kind of, did the best they could to help me stay on track, because my parents kind of didn't. And fortunately, I managed to graduate high school, and then, all my friends went off to college, and I did briefly. And then I just really fell into the drugs, really, really bad into the speed. And at some point in there, the after effects, the come down from speed was so horrible. It was awful. And so when I was about 19, I discovered alcohol. Boy, it took the edge off that come down and stuff. And like, it was great. It was like, it kind of balanced me back out. And that was, exactly what I was looking for. And so the combination of the two, I'd stay up on speed and come down on alcohol, and like slowly but surely the speed kind of, went away, and it was just alcohol. And, I got to where I was drinking like 2/5 of vodka a day, and just completely just hopeless. I was absolutely not a functional alcoholic, and it was only through the grace of a very codependent family that I was able to, do anything at all, have a house or anything like that. I mean, they just wanted to try to keep a roof over my head, so they were always paying my rent for me and bailing me out of bad situations and stuff. And so, like, life was just hard. It really was. And so finally, right after my 30th birthday, I drank and used drugs for about 15 years. Really hardcore. And finally, right after my 30th birthday, I had moved to another city, and one day I woke up and I had spent all my money the night before. I woke up in a cheap motel room, realized I didn't have anything left. I had nowhere to go. I had no money. Didn't even have, the means to get another bottle of booze to make me feel better. I mean, I was like finally just at absolute rock bottom. And it occurred to me for a second. I was like, wow, this is it. Like, if I go outside of this motel room, I just live outside after that, and I couldn't, that was the one place that I wasn't willing to go. I'd already lost quite a bit in the meantime. I'd been married when I was in my early 20s. We had a child. I managed to drink myself out of those situations. Fortunately, my daughter and I have reconciled since, and we're doing good now. But, I didn't have my kid in my life. I barely had anything, And so in this hotel room, right before they would kick me out at 11 a.m. for checkout, I made a phone call to a treatment center here in the city that I live in. And I didn't recognize it for the miracle it was at the time, but now, if you were to call that place and ask, if they had a bed available, they would tell you not for 90 days at least, if not 6 months. And so I called that place that morning, and they were like, yeah, we have a bed right now. Come down. And so I managed to get down there. I managed to get there to that treatment center. And, they did me an intake on me, and, I was in pretty rough shape from, having drank for the last, 12 years straight, basically. And so they took me to one of our hospitals here in the city, and they were like, no, you can't go into the rehab right now. You're detoxing from alcohol. You're going to need to medically detox here. And so I spent a full week in the cardiac unit at our hospital detoxing. I was basically, drugged up on Librium for a week, and while my body, kind of detoxed all the alcohol and went through the delirium tremens and everything. Unfortunately, I was sedated for most of it, so I don't really remember that. But in that time, it never really occurred to me what I was going to do after I got out of the hospital. And it was interesting that while I was in there, my aunt, by some happenstance, started talking to a neighbor of hers that she had lived across the street from for like 20 years and never once talked to this guy. And she wanted to go check her mail one morning while I was in the hospital, and this guy was outside, and somehow or another they got on the subject of me being in the hospital for alcohol poisoning, basically, and alcoholism. And he said, hey, I happen to own a recovery house, and and he's like, I'd be happy to go see your nephew. And so he got a few people together from our local AA meeting and came and saw me in the hospital and offered me a place to stay. And, it was like amazing. It was a miracle. It was absolutely a godsend. And so I took him up on the offer. And that was like at the beginning of April 2008. And I moved in after I got out of the hospital, had to stay, had to go to meetings a lot and stuff, just to stay in the recovery house. And so I got into a 12-step program, went to a lot of meetings, got a sponsor, was doing great work. And stayed sober for about 3 months. And then in the July 4th weekend of 2008, I got a stimulus check, because that was after the crash had happened with, the market and everything, and or something like that. Anyway, got a $400 stimulus check. And I took that, and I had never had that kind of a chunk of money in my hands before. And I proceeded to go and check into a hotel and drink for the next 3 days, till July 7th of 2008. And fortunately, I got kicked out of that hotel, had no money, went and begged the owner of the recovery house to come back. He said, "You get one more chance." And fortunately, the last drink I've ever had in my entire life was, well, I mean, July 6th, 2008. But, I consider my sobriety date to be July 7th, 2008 from alcohol. And, it was such a miracle that happened. And I, managed to stay in the recovery house for a while until I was ready to kind of start moving out on my own. I moved in with some other sober friends, and then eventually moved out of there and got remarried. Got a really good job and everything, and managed to do really well for the next 10 years. I ended up getting divorced, and then I got remarried again. So I've been married 3 times, and this last one seems to have taken. We've been together for 10 years now. But, it was an amazing thing that I was spared from that. And then in 2018, I guess the Spirit decided that I needed to go for one more round, do a little more deep learning, a little more market research. And so I relapsed on drugs in February of 2018, a few months before my 10th sobriety anniversary, and was out for 6 more years. I came back into the program. I came back into the 12-step program in November of 2024. And I won't say that I'm completely sober today. I use cannabis and kratom for sleep. So but it's not one of those things that I'm certainly not using any of my old drugs of choice or anything like that. So, but I'm not defending that either. We'll get to that when we get to it. But for now, I just am grateful to not be on alcohol and speed and all the other stuff that really tore my life to pieces. And so, after November 2024, I came back in, and then, or November 2023, I'm sorry, November 2023, I came back in. And, it was in early 2024 that I really started feeling this call that I really needed to use these experiences to help other people. And like I said, I had never had any inclination whatsoever to be a YouTuber, never even crossed my mind. But I started to realize that there's a lot of people that could benefit from, what I've been through. And so I would say that I had my first spiritual awakening in 2008, the first phase of it at least. And then I would say the second phase happened in early 2024. Got a sponsor, great guy. We're still working together. And really, I've taken the meditation, prayer a lot, and just really like amping up my life to be of service. And really that's kind of how it all, begins. And I just really hope that I can be of service, and really help people out. And so that's what I aim to do with this channel. I kind of want to break it down, and the next episodes will be sort of an individual topic at a time. And I'm kind of working on the schedule for that. But, if you resonate with me, cool. That's awesome. If not, we can be friends in another part of life and stuff, and no hard feelings. I just really hope that I can use this platform to find my tribe and find the people that I can be of service to. And I wish you all, just abundance, really. That's what we're here for. We're all here to learn from each other, to be mirrors for each other, to teach each other, and to live a life of abundance and ease. And, I think with the way the human consciousness is evolving, I think that's going to be more and more plausible as time goes on. And it's just going to take all of us working together. So, thank you so much for clicking on this video. If you liked it, please subscribe, give me a like. I'd appreciate it. And let's all work together, and let's learn how to have a fruitful, meaningful, abundant life together. All right, and that's all I have for today. Thank you for joining me, and I'll see you next time.